Dani Olmo has arrived in Manchester and is set to sign with a local club. Is Salah's new contract agreed? Marcus Rashford has found a new club. Is Guardiola preparing a £180 million bid for a Bayern star? We're talking about all this and much more today. If this video gets 500 thumbs up, it will give us the incentive to keep making new videos. So, enjoy the show and let's get started. Barcelona is seriously targeting Bayer Leverkusen's central defender Jonathan Tah, and it seems the deal could materialize as early as this coming summer. Not long ago, Tah was being linked with all of Europe's top clubs, and now the Catalans are practically ironing his shirt with the blue and garnet stripes. Moreover, they're aiming for a free transfer, which has become something of a trademark move for Barca lately, given their well-known financial struggles. What's behind this sudden urgency? Rumor has it that Tah's contract in Leverkusen is practically down to its final months, and he's not keen on renewing it. Of course, Bayer resisted with all their might, but ultimately agreed to let the player go only by 2025. This is the classic "we don't want to sell now, we'd rather say goodbye later" strategy. Now, with the German officially allowed to negotiate with other clubs in January, everything could be resolved within weeks. Adding fuel to the fire, these rumors coincide with the situation surrounding Ronald Araujo. According to the Spanish press, the Catalan club has issued him an ultimatum. Either sign a new contract by June, buddy, or start packing your bags. Sounds pretty harsh, right? Previously, they would have panicked at the prospect of losing their leading centre-back. But if Tah is already halfway into the Camp Nou dressing room, Barca can relax. They believe they can cover the position without any unnecessary fuss. However, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Other sources claim that Tah himself is still mulling it over, and although a 5-year deal with the Blaugrana seems quite likely, he seems to be in no hurry to click "confirm transfer" in the football equivalent of an online store. Maybe the German defender is waiting for a wink from the Premier League or for an even more generous contract to land on his table. However, Barcelona has an ace up its sleeve in Hansi Flick, who knows Tah from the German national team. When you have someone at the club who can convince the desired player not only with speeches about great prospects, but also with a good old personal connection, it's worth its weight in gold. One might ask, why is Barcelona so persistently pursuing Tah if Flick already has Araujo, Koundé, and a couple of other players as backup? It seems that the management is being proactive here. Firstly, it's a financial maneuver. A free transfer saves them from significant spending. Secondly, the pressure on Araujo could deter his agent from trying to negotiate for mountains of gold. Barca is essentially saying, "You want to be with us? Let's sign. No? We already have an alternative." The third reason is simply protection against injuries and suspensions. Remember last season when the Catalan defense was walking a tightrope due to endless personnel shortages? Bringing in Tah would mean solidifying the backline. It's either a beneficial compromise or a replacement in case of an unpredictable scenario. But what if Tah changes his mind and chooses, say, an English direction? Clubs like Chelsea or Manchester United would gladly snatch up a defender who's unwilling to extend his contract. Wouldn't Barcelona then look foolish, fixating on the prospect of a free agent and undermining their relationship with Araujo? And the question arises, how will Barcelona manage to pull off all these transfer changes while balancing on the edge of financial fair play, with a millstone of debt hanging around their neck? Or perhaps we'll witness a new era of pragmatic moves by Joan Laporta, where every euro is calculated with a cool head but results in high-profile acquisitions. Will Tah become the new pillar of defense that gives Barca stability, or will the Catalan project once again be limited to loud headlines and short-lived alliances? We'll find out soon enough when the January transfer window opens the door to new intrigues. Federico Chiesa's adventure at Liverpool is starting to resemble a sad novel with a bad ending. The Italian winger, who once lit up Juventus like a disco ball, has found himself relegated to the role of a bench warmer at Anfield. Just 123 minutes in 6 months, and that's with his talent. It begs the question, what was the point of this transfer in the first place? Liverpool's manager, Arne Slot, also seems to have failed to find a place for Chiesa. On the one hand, you can understand him. After injuries, a player is like a box with a surprise. You never know what's inside. But is that why you buy a star for millions? To keep him on the bench and only let him play in League Cup matches? Let's call a spade a spade. Chiesa in the Premier League is a failure. Only 18 minutes in the EPL in half a year. And now for the rumours. Word is that Federico himself is unhappy with the situation, and who can blame him? A player who was the engine of the attack in Italy is barely getting started here. There's already talk that he might return to Serie A. Inter, Roma, Milan, even Napoli, they're all interested, but his €7.5 million salary is definitely a sticking point. It seems the only realistic option is a loan. Liverpool is reportedly willing to cover part of his wages just to give the player a chance to reboot. But who will take the risk? Well, Atalanta is already sizing up Chiesa for their style. Gianpiero Gasperini is known for his ability to turn fallen stars into comets. Remember Ilicic or Papu Gomez? They also went through a reboot in Bergamo and shone anew. Maybe Chiesa will be next on that list. On the other hand, for Liverpool, the situation looks like a failure of their transfer policy. Buying a player who doesn't fit the team's style is like wearing a tie with a t-shirt. It's uncomfortable and useless. Yes, injuries are a factor, but there are medical tests. There's time for adaptation. Or did the club expect Chiesa to immediately start playing like in his best days at Juventus? Returning to Italy, is it a step back or a chance to regain his form? Serie A is his home, his arena where he terrorized defenders and scored masterpieces. But can he shine again? Or will this episode in England leave scars on his career? So what's next? January is already close, and it seems that Chiesa is indeed on the verge of a change. The only question is, who is willing to take the risk and sign him? Back to Italy? Or maybe another club in Europe will believe in his talent? Let's leave this riddle open. Where do you think we'll see Federico Chiesa in the spring? Matheus Cunha, a name that's currently on everyone's lips. The Brazilian forward, who arrived at Wolverhampton Wanderers in the summer of 2023, has become a true star for the team and one of the most talked about players in the Premier League. 10 goals and 4 assists in 18 matches. This isn't just a statistic, it's a statement. A statement that Matheus is ready to play at the highest level. What makes Matheus Cunha so desirable? Simple technique? Speed? No, he's not just a player who runs and scores. He's a versatile soldier, capable of covering multiple positions in attack. His vision on the field is like a chess game, where he's always one step ahead. And his goal against Manchester United on Boxing Day? Pure poetry. If you saw that moment, you might have caught yourself thinking, who is this guy who literally dragged Wolves by the scruff of their neck against a giant? Of course, such a player couldn't go unnoticed. Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United, Newcastle, they're all already lining up. But there's a nuance. Matheus himself isn't in a hurry to leave, and that deserves respect. In an era where footballers chase big salaries, Matheus says, "I'm staying to help the Wolves." Beautiful, isn't it? At first glance, Manchester United seems to be the favourite in the race for Matheus Cunha, and it's not that simple. Ruben Amorim reportedly sees Matheus as a key player for his system. They say the Brazilian's dynamism and technique would fit perfectly into the Red Devils' style. But let's face it, does Matheus Cunha himself need this? Yes, the club is great, but its problems are obvious. Leaving a team where you're the main protagonist for a project that currently resembles a construction site is a questionable choice. On the other hand, there's Arsenal. Arteta has already proven that he knows how to work with young and ambitious players. But do the Gunners need Matheus right now? They already have Gabriel Jesus, who, when not injured, plays an important role. And Matheus Cunha's form itself attracted Arsenal's attention more in case Wolves get relegated. And that, as we know, is far from certain at the moment. But let's be honest, how long can Wolves hold on to such a player? With all due respect to the club, Matheus has already outgrown their level. And if offers come in the summer, and they will, it will be difficult for Wolverhampton to keep their leader. Right now, Wolves are in a strong position. Cunha's contract runs until 2027, and his value will certainly not be lower than the £44 million the club paid to Atletico Madrid. But how much exactly are the top clubs willing to pay for him? 50 million, 60, or even 80? In the current realities of the transfer market, the sum could be astronomical. But then another question arises. Is it worth overpaying? Matheus is good, no doubt. But he hasn't yet become a player of the level of Salah, Haaland or Kane. Paying for potential is always a risk, and there's no guarantee it will pay off. Remember João Felix, for whom Atletico paid €126 million. Where is he now, and what do you think? Should Matheus Cunha leave this winter, or is it better for him to finish the season at Wolves? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rashford in La Liga. According to the latest rumours, Catalan club Barcelona is considering Marcus as a potential reinforcement. It would seem, why would they need a player who, in recent months, has been featured more in news headlines than on the football pitch? At 27, Rashford is no longer the young talent who tore apart opponents at Old Trafford. In recent seasons, his form has clearly been lacking, as have the results of Manchester United itself. In addition, his salary, around £400,000 a week, looks like another nail in the coffin of a potential transfer. Nevertheless, Hansi Flick reportedly sees something in him that perhaps we don't. The Catalans are even supposedly ready to consider a loan deal with United, participating in paying the lion's share of that very salary. How do you like that scenario? Financial dexterity, or simply a desperate move by a club that is still licking its wounds after the Bartomeu era? But that's not all. According to Sport ES, Barcelona has set a condition. Marcus must agree to cut his appetite in half, from $400,000 a week to $200,000. Even then, many are asking, is it worth it? And that is indeed the question. What is Barca hoping for? That Rashford will suddenly resurrect in a new system, or that the loan will become a convenient way to raise his market value? The story with Tottenham is also worth mentioning. Postecoglou, known for his focus on young players, simply doesn't see the point in this transfer. Spurs have their own priorities, and Marcus clearly doesn't fit into their project. It turns out that Rashford's choices are limited. And what does he do? He declares his desire to leave quietly, without unnecessary fuss. The irony of fate, there's more fuss around his name now than ever before. Meanwhile, Manchester United has officially removed him from the squad. This is no longer just rumours. Rashford is on his way out, but where to? If sources are to be believed, negotiations with Barca are already underway. The loan option looks the most realistic, especially if we recall how Sancho went to Dortmund at the beginning of the year under a similar scheme. Maybe this will be Marcus's salvation, or is his career beyond saving? This whole story resembles a classic football soap opera, where each episode ends on a cliffhanger. So let's fantasize. Let's say the loan happens. What next? Will Rashford find himself in La Liga, or will he become another Barcelona mistake? And while we wait for official news, write in the comments, how do you assess such a transfer? And most importantly, who should take on the role of savior for Marcus? The financial carousel at Barcelona is spinning in the opposite direction of Joan Laporta's claims of the club's revival. They signed a big new contract with Nike. Great. But that doesn't negate the severe budget deficit. The Catalans still have to keep their eyes and ears open for advantageous transfer deals, and even their best performers could end up being snatched by rivals. Why? Because without significant sales, active movement in the market is unlikely. And this is where it gets interesting. Rumour has it that Barca's management is ready to listen to offers for their central defenders, Andreas Christensen and Ronald Araujo. Juventus is supposedly already sharpening its teeth for this pair, not for the summer, but this winter. Risky? More than. But when an empty wallet dictates the direction, logic starts to revolve around who is worth how much and how quickly can we plug the hole. Meanwhile, the situation with Ansu Fati looks like a real squandering of talent. The young Spaniard is warming the bench more and more often, and even with a packed schedule, Hansi Flick doesn't seem to trust him much. In any case, Fati rarely appears, plays little, and he was once considered the future of the Blaugrana. Is the only option really to part ways with great potential just to grab a few million? But Barca clearly wants to squeeze the maximum out of the sale, satisfy the player, fill their coffers, and not upset the fans. Is this achievable? Adding fuel to the fire, the summer scandal surrounding Dani Olmo's transfer only intensified talk of chaotic management. To push out İlkay Gündoğan, last season's best player, and then swear that it was solely about the game model. Seriously, because immediately after, they signed Olmo. Young, talented and expensive. They were only able to register the midfielder due to Christensen's injury, but the Dane is returning soon. Then the club could lose Olmo. His contract has a clause allowing him to leave if his registration is in question. What player wants to sit on their suitcase in the middle of the season? The veil is lifted when new reports arrive from England. The BBC claims that Olmo and his agent have already visited Manchester. Manchester United is luring the dribbler with promises of great prospects, and, most importantly, the possibility of getting him without a hefty transfer fee. Yes, they'll have to shell out for a bonus and a contract, but that's still much cheaper than paying Barca 80 million euros. And if the player is tired of being a pawn in the Catalan bureaucracy, then the choice is obvious. Will Olmo's departure be another disgrace for Barcelona? It seems that the ghost of managerial errors, which already haunted the club during Bartomeu's era, is looming again. And all this against the backdrop of Laporta's loud promises to return the Blaugrana to the top of European football. But perhaps this shake-up will force the club to engage their brains and find a way to keep their young stars. Or will Barca finally crumble into pieces, losing both their centre-backs and their wonder kids, while the financial vice tightens its grip on their throat? Manchester City is ready to fight for Jamal Musiala, but behind the scenes, things are far from straightforward. Sell Kevin De Bruyne to make way for the 21-year-old Bayern Munich prodigy. However, it seems that's where things are heading. Let's start with the facts. De Bruyne is, without a doubt, a Manchester City legend and one of the best midfielders of his generation. But in recent seasons, he's been more notable for his trips to the doctor than for his magic on the pitch. Constant injuries have taken their toll on the Belgian, and he's no longer the Kevin of a couple of seasons ago. This season, he's played in only 3 of the last 8 matches. A statistic that's, to put it mildly, unimpressive. And what does a club that wants to stay at the top need? That's right, fresh blood. And here enters Jamal Musiala, a guy who's just 21, has already become a symbol of the new generation in Europe. His 14 goals and 6 assists in 22 matches speak for themselves. Fast, technical, versatile. He's exactly the type of player who could become the new heart of Manchester City's midfield. But will Bayern simply let their star go? Hardly. As reported by Court Offside, contract extension talks with Musiala in Munich are in full swing, but, pay attention, several giants have appeared on the horizon. Real Madrid, PSG, Liverpool, and of course, Manchester City. Sources claim that Bayern wants around 180 million euros. Honestly, this isn't just a request, it's a real statement. We're not selling. But Manchester City is a club that knows how to break barriers. The Citizens scouts have been spotted several times at the Allianz Arena, observing Musiala's game. And not just observing, but apparently preparing the ground for a potential transfer. And now, let's add another layer of drama. Bayern's current coach is Vincent Kompany, a man who, until recently, was an icon at Manchester City. How will he react to his former club's attempts to snatch away a key player? Unlikely with enthusiasm. But even if City manages to persuade Musiala to move to the Etihad, what will happen to Kevin? There are 2 options. Either he becomes a super sub or he's sold to free up space on the wage bill. And here arises a rhetorical question. Is it worth replacing a proven player with a young star who might still flop? After all, football is not only about statistics, but also about chemistry, which is impossible to calculate. What do you think? Is Guardiola really ready to let go of one of his favorite players? Or is this all a strategic game by City to make Bayern nervous? In any case, the transfer window is about to open, and Manchester City clearly intends to be at the center of the action. Pep needs to refresh the team, which stumbled on Boxing Day against Everton, a result that can hardly be called worthy of champions. New forwards, midfielders, and possibly even tactical changes? Who knows what Guardiola is preparing? So, friends, what do you think? Can Musiala become the new De Bruyne, or would City be better off spending that money on someone else? Alright folks, Mohamed Salah has us guessing about his future once again. Could the Egyptian star really be staying at Anfield until 2028? That's the bombshell dropped by the Spanish publication Fichajes. And while it's not exactly a source that deserves complete trust, you have to admit it's too loud to ignore. Salah, who's already 32, has found himself in the center of a negotiation whirlwind. On the one hand, he's supposedly reached an agreement with Liverpool on a new 3-year contract. On the other hand, the club has recently become noticeably more cautious with offers for players over 30. Is this a challenge to age stereotypes or an attempt to hold on to a key figure at any cost? According to Fichajes, the 2 sides have already shaken hands. A contract until 2028 is allegedly ready, and this is against the backdrop of previous rumors about a compromise regarding a 2-year agreement. Moreover, it's said that Salah's salary could be flexible. Fewer years, less money. It's interesting. What does Salah himself think of this offer? It's unlikely that he, accustomed to the status of the main star, would agree to a reduction in salary. But who knows, maybe his love for the club will outweigh the financial aspect. By the way, the idea of a flexible salary is almost a revolution in the world of contracts. especially for a club that in recent years has been used to counting every penny. Remember how FSG avoided overpaying and taking risks? And here's Salah, who not only needs to be paid but also needs a contract extension at this age. The question arises, how justified is this risk? Can a 35-year-old Salah be as useful as the current one? In the summer, he was actively linked with a move to Saudi Arabia. Huge money, huge hype, but Mohamed remained loyal to Liverpool. It seemed like a done deal. A new contract was a formality. However, new rumours suddenly appeared on the horizon. Salah hinted that he wanted to stay, but his statements remained vague. Why? Perhaps because negotiations with FSG are like a chess match. Every move must be thought out to the smallest detail. And now they're throwing out information about a contract until 2028. This could be a sensation for a club that is traditionally cautious with long-term commitments. But there's a catch. Fichajes is not the most reliable source. Where did they get this information? Could the club or Salah's camp be intentionally fueling interest in the topic? It's logical to assume that the tactic might be aimed at gauging fan reaction. Will it work? And here another question arises. What does Van Dijk think? Another veteran, another candidate for an extension. If both sign new contracts, Liverpool will send a clear signal. The club is ready to bet on proven warriors, even despite their age. But what does this mean for the future? Won't these steps become an obstacle to rejuvenating the squad? And most importantly, how should the fans react to this? Rejoice or wait for official statements? For now, the situation resembles a game of nerves. Nobody knows how this saga will end, but one thing is for sure. Liverpool is not going to give up. They know Salah's worth. And while age may just be a number, the question is, can the Egyptian star remain just as bright in 3 or 4 years? So, what do you think? Is this contract a triumph or a risk? Share your opinions in the comments and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the latest football news.